Welcome everyone to Already Cancelled. I am Peter, that is Connor, and we are going to talk about Star Trek The Next Generation Season 6, Episode 2. It's called Realm of Fear. So full spoilers for the episode. This is a Barclay episode. Broccoli's back in all his glory. He is the central character. They find the ship, the Yosemite, which has been heavily damaged. The crew are either dead or missing, and they're investigating it, and there's something wonky going on with the energy, so they can't just beam in and out. But they find a way to connect their transporter station to the other ship's station, so they can beam one person at a time, station to station, right? So there's no random beaming from just X location. It has to be pad to pad, and they go over. But the big focus of this episode is that Barclay is very scared of the transporter beam. He does not like it. He's weirded out by it, and sure enough, he eventually does get convinced to work up the courage to go along. But on his way back, he sees something on the wing, as it were. He sees something in the beam, which I can only describe as a turd with a mouth. Which
do you know what it was?
Mm-hmm.
It was I'm completely blanking on the name of it now, but it's a real thing. It's what they use in Discovery. Yeah, for the little like microbe things that they use to travel the ship. Tardigrades.
Okay, right. It looked turdish to me, and then like with a awkward mouth at the front. But it bites his arm, and then when he comes out, his arm's glowing a little bit. He doesn't show anyone though, because he thinks he's just being weird and going crazy because he's Barclay and he's imagining things. But of course, there's some evidence piles up, and the episode progresses from there. So that's it. I mean, I think the broad stroke I would say of this episode is it's very much about people who are scared about getting on planes, and there's a lot of conversations which you can almost just swap out a few keywords, and it's about talking to someone about how, because there's a line about how
it's form of transport.
Yeah, well, yeah, it was someone said, "Oh, millions of people use the transporter beams every day, and there's like, in like 10 years, there's like a handful of accidents," and I'm like, that sounds like someone talking about planes, like like millions of people use planes every day, and the number of crashes is actually really small.
There was one element of it that wasn't intentional at the time, but in today we have have you heard of a twilight anesthetic?
No.
So it's like where it puts you under, obviously, if you're having like some sort of surgery, but it also makes you forget. So it's kind of like creepy in that it basically feels like they count you down from like 10, and by the time you get to 1, you're unconscious. And then you wake up and it's hours later, and but you have no memory because you're like hazy usually. And but there's like some people are like terrified of it because of the idea of how consciousness works. Like you're essentially gone for hours. It's like, well, what if parts of you don't quite come back? Like what if like a couple of neurons don't fire in quite the same way? It's like, are you the same person that you were before?
Honestly, I think it's more trusting the other people in the room. Well, I'm not going to remember it that I'm more concerned about than my brain not coming back properly.
I'm sure other people are scared of that as well. But that specific element of it really reminded me of when he was being reasonably justifiably terrified of, well, what if I'm not reconstituted exactly right and I'm not me anymore?
Yeah, he's like, his fears weren't silly. Like you kind of like when you actually stop and think about what's happening when they're going into transporter beams and popping up in another location, it is kind of wild.
And to be fair, Troy is like, yeah, that's because that is exactly what's happening.
Yeah. Because he even says at one point in the episode, like part of the reason why he scares because he actually, part of his like Starfleet Academy training is that he took classes learning how this stuff worked, and that scared him far more than it did beforehand. Because now he's like, oh, I'm being deatomized, and then reformed.
Yeah, ignorance is bliss.
Yes. But yeah, so that's the gist of the episode, and it is very Barclay centric. There's a lot of him on his own, whilst the other stuff's going on around him. What did you make of this one?
I actually had a lot of fun with it. I think I was expecting a kind of by the numbers episode.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I thought it was pretty enjoyable. Like I said, yes, it is very much about plane travel, essentially, but it made for a solid episode.
Yeah, I mean, you could translate
quite a relatable fear for a lot of people.
Yeah, I think you could translate it to a lot of things, but that's the one that I think sticks out as just being the most one-to-one, and people talking about it. It was funny we were talking about O'Brien not being in the last episode because he's all over this one.
Oh yeah, couldn't get enough of him.
Because because obviously he's the main person we associate with working the transporter. So it made sense that he was here to be the voice for that.
And he gets to be like really, really show off how good he is at this. Like, hey, I've done this so many times. Never once messed up so much as an atom. I'm king of this.
Someone go back and check the whole show and see if he has someone on the because I'm not convinced. I actually really love because at the start of the episode when they're beaming one by one, and Barclay's already a little bit nervous because he doesn't like it. But then it's like, oh, this is kind of a different type of connection. Oh, we can connect, one to one with the other pads, but because it's already different and not like a typical safe thing. Like I think O'Brien or one of them says, there might be a little bit of interference here, but nothing too serious. That immediately makes Barclay like clench up, and he's like, wait, well, this is different. This is you're telling me.
He starts questioning it.
Yeah, but so I think it's Worf because he's security. Maybe it was Riker. Nah, I think it was Worf. Worf goes first, and O'Brien. I don't think he's intentionally doing it, but I kind of like laughed a little bit if he's been a little cheeky, where he's like, Oh, almost lost. Oh no, he's fine. Like he's talking about how there's like little signals like interfere, and he's like, oh no, I've got him.
I thought the direction here was actually quite good because there's a lot of focusing on Barclay, like really close shots of him, like not quite hyperventilating, but almost there. Oh
yeah, he's hanging on every word O'Brien says. As O'Brien's like casually just saying, "Oh, almost lost him into the oblivion, into the void." But never mind. I got him.
We're all good.
And obviously, I'm exaggerating the words that were used. There was a lot more just kind of by the numbers.
That was definitely how Barclay was hearing it.
Absolutely. So it was kind of cracking me up. It was almost like he was intentionally trying to scare the shit out of him before it was his turn to go up. And he doesn't actually go. He says he can't do it and he leaves. And he goes to see Troy for a therapy session. And she teaches him about tapping the back of his neck. That'll help him calm down because it's where it'll help endorphins be released or something.
I'm not sure this has any basis.
You tried it though, right? When she said it, and you started doing it. No, I tried it. I was sitting tapping the back of my neck for a good 30 seconds to see if I felt it.
Did it do anything?
Nothing that I noticed, but
I'm shocked.
Then again, it's not like there's someone over my shoulder saying, "Oh, you're hitting the not quite the right spot." Maybe I was slightly off.
Oh, yeah. Blame your ignorance.
Look, I'm just saying, I gave it a try to see if there was any truth to it. Okay.
It was Betazoid pseudoscience.
I mean, you say that, but there's this little trick you can do with someone's knee to give them like half an orgasm, and it is like proven to work every time.
I'm not going to ask.
No. See if you just sort of do that over someone's knee, just sort of release your fingers slowly over someone's knee. They'll get a little tingle. It'll go up their leg, and they'll feel it.
Sure.
Trust me.
I'll tell you what for it. Give you away from my knees next time.
You can't do it to yourself. It's like tickling yourself. You can't do it to yourself. It has to be someone else. But maybe it was 1/8 of an orgasm when I was taught this. I can't remember the exact fraction.
It's getting worse and worse.
The point is though, there's a noticeable effect that it works on everyone. But anyway, so Troy gives him the pep talk, gets him to tap the back of his neck, and it does, that gets him going, and he goes into the transporter beam, and but before he goes though, there's a great conversation with O'Brien, where O'Brien's like realizing he's scared, and he comes in and he's like, hey, I kind of get where you're coming from. So, you're scared of the transport? He's like, oh no, but I'm scared of spiders.
Well, that'd be stupid, me being scared of the transport.
Yeah, but he tries to relate to him with his own phobia, his own fear, and starts talking about spiders. And it does kind of seem to help him a little bit, but he's kind of obviously, it's got a payoff at the end where we find out that he actually keeps a pet spider to sort of overcome his fear.
Tarantula.
A pet tarantula, yes. And the joke is, of course, is that in this scene, Barclay says spiders have never really bothered him, but at the end of the episode, when O'Brien leaves him alone with the tarantula, he just sort of looks down and just going for his hand, and he's like,
I get that though, because spiders in general don't bother me. Like, I'm happy to
sure, yeah.
They're all over the room right now. I'm happy to, they do their thing, but I also don't want a tarantula on me.
No, that's fair. That is fair. But I still plays that way for the episode's joke, though.
It does, but it was a weird one where I'm like, yeah, I kind of get. There's a difference between I'm okay with them, they're fine, but also I don't like them.
I don't have an irrational fear of axe murderers, but if someone runs towards me with an axe with the clear intent to stick it in my head, I'm going to feel scared in the moment.
Quite reasonably, yeah.
But yeah, so he goes on the trip. He helps out in the mission. Obviously, there's some talk here or there about what's happened to this ship, what's going on, why are they gone. They speculate at one point it was a Cardassian attack, and if that's happened, it's a big deal. They have to talk about it.
I'm wondering, is that going to be a thing that they're kind of building with this season? Because they're throwing that in early, right?
Well, no, because I happen to know Cardassians are a big part of Deep Space Nine, so I'm wondering.
Well, that's what I'm wondering. I'm wondering if that's what they're building towards,
sure,
like kind of to set that up.
Oh, maybe, yeah. But I mean, I seeing O'Brien, I don't think it's necessarily intentionally reminding us he exists because he's known to pop up from time to time anyway. But yeah, maybe specifically mentioning Cardassians here or there is an intention because they know they're going to use them heavily in the other show.
It's more just, hey, this is going to be a thing. Let's kind of work them into the. Obviously, they're established already, but let's like work them into the ongoing lore a little bit more, just to make it feel a bit more connected when it happens.
Yeah, so it's just smart. It's just smart to do that. But it's when he's coming back where he's in the beam and he sees this floating worm turd mouth thing. It comes for him. It's kind of a funny scene. You know, it's a silly looking practical thing that comes at him. But I mean,
it's even sillier come the ending, isn't it? Though.
Oh yeah, when it's actually like you can see its mouth really close towards the end of the episode, and it looks really.
And when it turns out these things are actually the crew
of the other ship, yeah. They've turned into these things in the transporter field.
Mm-hmm. Yep, sure. That's what happens to matter in there.
Well, it's only because of the effect of like these things that are in there doing this to them.
Yeah. Which
at the end they contain and like send off once they figured everything out. Obviously, like so little of the episode's actually about that part of it. Like most of it.
There's a bioscan. It's all good. Fill it out.
I mean, Bartley gets his hero moment, but we'll get to that in a sec. He has a few things where he thinks he's going crazy.
Transport psychosis.
Yeah. He brings up this thing that people legitimately have had, but we learned. So this is a bit of mythology for us. Is that they made transporters better like decades ago. You know, this used to be a thing that some people. I guess like travel sickness, effectively.
I guess I think it's a little bit more severe than that.
It does sound more severe, but like I'm just comparing it to that in the sense that, you know, 1 in say 50 people might get it, kind of thing.
Yeah, they were like, yeah, but no one's had that in like 50 years.
Yeah,
like, it's not that because I think it was a thing where essentially some of the neurons in the brain didn't quite rebuild in the right way when you were put back together, and you had some pretty nasty, presumably permanent side effects. Whereas. Yeah, we made transporters better. It's all good. They don't do that anymore. But
presumably it was still rare enough that the benefit of the transporters was still something they were using, even with this slight risk. But he says something like, ever since we switched to the 4-pad system or something, you know, that's why there's redundancies, there's all these things to like to make it safer as time goes on. And he's trying, because he's like helping him like check out the systems, because there was some readings as he was coming back, and he's like, no, I'll check everything for you. Brian's very nice about it. He's never a dick. And I thought it was going to be, because the first time he gets scared and runs out and O'Brien gives like whoever's with him this look, I was like, oh, he's got to like rip into him later.
They do take it seriously though.
Yeah.
Like when he's like, hey, no, there was something there. So they go checks, and then there's a point where he has a bit of soul searching, and he's like, I'm gonna go see Picard. The captain needs to be involved in this.
Well, it's not just soul searching. He intentionally asks O'Brien to send him back in to see if he wants to know for sure if he hallucinated something or if there's something still there.
Yeah.
And he tries to play it off as this is an order from so and so, Geordie or whoever, and eventually O'Brien
you need to get some tricorder readings.
Yeah, he calls his bluff because he's like, you don't actually have a tricorder with you. What are you talking about? And he's like, okay, I need to do this to make sure I'm not crazy. You understand that?
He pulls rank.
Yeah.
He pulls rank and goes, it's an order, just do it.
Well, he does that first though, but then O'Brien points out the flaw. And then he says, look, I need to do this to make sure I'm not crazy. And O'Brien says, yeah, I can get that. And then he does it for him. So he pulls rank, but it's notably not... Like, and he would have done it for the rank, I'm sure, but it ultimately doesn't become about that once he actually does it. He does it because he understands why he's doing it. And then when he sees the worm thing again, he's like, wake up everyone, and he tells Picard and all that. And the funny thing is that he's like, yes, I know I've been acting a little strange, and I'm a little scared.
And it's me.
But, you know, I intentionally didn't say anything because I thought it was just in my head. but I went back and double checked. There is something going on. There is something there, and there's a little bit of a reading on his arm to back up. It matches one of the dead bodies they found.
Yeah, but not straight away. Like, because the initial scan they do, like immediately in the room, is like, oh, there's nothing.
Yeah, well, because they say it's building up because it's like they're in his body as well. These, because they're actually tiny. These things that are in his body. Yeah. Because the worm things that you've seen are actually the crew that have turned into like giant versions of them.
Yeah, their hypothesis at the time is just matter's a little bit fuzzy in there. Maybe they seem bigger than they are because you're in there and kind of semi dematerialized at that point.
Yeah, but it turns out they're bigger because it's actually the crew that have turned into these things.
But I did like that scene where Picard, he is like, "Are you sure you're not imagining it? Like, just to be sure." And he's like, "Nope, 100% sure." Picard's like, "All right then."
And he gives it like 5. Systems. He gives it 5 hours. Like, shut down the transporters, put security on the air. He gets really serious and takes everything.
He does take it seriously, even if it does sound a bit crazy. He's willing to go. I'm not going to take the risk. Let's do it properly.
Yeah, as much as Barclay is a bit of a, Barclay, he is still a member of the crew who is qualified for his job, and he's double checked this. Like he's went back and confirmed because he was hesitant, and he still believes it's a thing. So he's taking it seriously. But he gets his hero moment because when they're basically the plan to like flush them out is that they have to put him back in the beam, but hold them in there, which is kind of dangerous because the longer you hold them in the beam, the more likely they might not be able, they might lose him. But he's brave enough to go in and do it, but he has like an extra hero moment because it occurs to him in there what these other worm things might be. So he grabs onto one when they're bringing him back, and sure enough, it turns out to be a crew member. So not only does he overcome his fear for the sake of like solving the problem, but he ends up just on his own choice with his own moment of making what would you call it? Taking the initiative. He just saves someone, and then like, all of those in there are people. Go in and get them. So then
it's like Worf and a couple of the others, like red
security.
Shirts. It's like it's like that people grab hold of them.
Yeah, so they go in, and so he ends up saving like whoever made the crew get turned into these things. He saves lives.
Like 4, and I think that's what made him think of it because he knew how many crew were missing and unaccounted for because they had all the like bodies for the rest. Yeah,
because he sees more. Because the first couple of times he only sees one, but then he sees a few, and he's like, "Oh, wait a minute! Like, why is there?"
This lines up.
Yeah. So, he's not an idiot, and he is able to do this, and like he's able to be brave enough that he does something a little ballsy because he's told not to move because it increases the risk of them losing him when he's in the beam. But he does. He grabs the worm and saves some lives. So Barclay gets a little hero moment in this episode, which is. Yeah, it's a nice touch. Now you get the funny ending with O'Brien, and the spider. So, yeah, it's a decent little episode. It's not one that I think is going to stick out in the grand scheme of the show, but I think Barclay as a character has never had a dull episode. They've not always been amazing episodes per se, but they've always had something to them.
I agree with that. I think this was more enjoyable than I expected because, and maybe it is just the addition of Barclay being memorable enough and unique enough for a character that it goes a little bit above beyond what it is, but the plot itself and a lot of the character beats are generic, like what I would expect in just an average episode.
I think what makes Barclay's episodes work, especially I don't know if the first one was less, but the last one definitely wasn't, and this one again, is that he is the protagonist. He's the one we follow around. We see him in his quarters like try to sleep, and we don't stay with the other characters for great lengths of time. He really truly becomes the main character of the episode, even though he's not around for most of the show.
Yeah, and I think that's maybe that is what elevates, because like I say, you can do all these character beats with, red shirt of the week, and this would be a very just average episode. But I think following Barclay, having that little bit extra perspective, it helps. It's someone that we're familiar with, but not like used to seeing on a regular basis.
I think Barclay, Rowe, and to an extent O'Brien. There are all these interesting characters in that they're not part of the main batch. O'Brien's kind of in between, admittedly, because he's kind of like there in the background a lot early on, but
he's not a bridge crew.
Yeah, but he's had a couple of individual episodes where he's really had a chance to shine and be elevated. But having these characters that aren't always there, but when they do come back, they're recurring and they feel big deals to the point where if you kill off an Ensign Rowe or a Barclay, it will actually feel like a kind of a big deal now, even though it's more lately than the main crew.
Yeah, it's likely enough. They're at a level where you could kill them, right? And it wouldn't be cheap. Like, it wouldn't just be, oh, well, you'd buy it, right?
Yeah.
But also, like I say, it would have some weight to it as well.
Yeah, it wouldn't just feel like a red shirt being killed, and I think that's an interesting thing to have on this type of show. I kind of prefer this approach to now that I'm this far into the series compared to Star Trek Discovery, where you've got all these faces in the bridge crew that are basically extras with the odd line here or there, and like they have names, but it's kind of this weird disconnect where, and it was really weird in season 4 as well, because they kept kind of like setting up plots for them, but then the plots would happen off camera. There's one that me and Tara really sort of made fun of, because like one of the guys on the bridge comes up to Saru and is like, oh, thanks for this opportunity, sir, to go and do this thing. And at the end of the episode, he comes back and thanks him again for letting him go and do this and like having this journey. I was like, but you just give him like a character arc off camera.
in this era of Trek shows, that's an episode.
Yes, it's just an episode where you follow that character, yeah. And sure, you have 26 episodes versus 13. Like, there's a difference there, but...
Well, that's a creative choice to begin with.
Yeah.
Right? Like, they could be making longer seasons if they wanted to.
Yeah, I bet that choice doesn't come from, like, that comes from a higher up place that aren't necessarily making it from a purely creative standpoint, but...
That is true, but also, that's up to the job of the showrunners and the other writers to then work within that constraint and choose to maybe spend some time doing those things as well.
But I think Barclay, to me, feels like a much more interesting, fleshed out character on this show after 3 episodes, because this is only his 3rd, I think, versus Detmer on Discovery.
I was gonna say, right, Detmer is the only one of the bridge crew outside of...
Well, you've got Owo, you've got...
Bear in mind, I've not watched it since.
I know you haven't, but
season 3. That's what I'm saying. My memory, Detmer is the only one I could have named.
It's been but this is the thing. During season 4, I was forgetting most of their names week to week. Like, there's not a lot that I can remember, and they added 1 or 2 new ones because one kind of left, and there was a whole thing. But the fact that I'm struggling, and I struggle even when it's airing weekly, and I can't remember all of their names. I think there's a Ryan. I want to say there's a Ryan.
Sounds familiar to me. Unless it's one of the new ones.
There could be a Ryan. Yeah, so... But, the point I'm making is that Barclay is much more memorable. Ensign Rowe is much more memorable, because having 2 or 3 episodes spread out over a couple of seasons dedicated to you is far more impacting because you actually focus on them for an episode. I mean, and arguably, even after 1 episode, I still kind of remember them.
I mean... It's like going back to original series, like Harry Mudd, right?
Oh yeah, 2 episodes, I think.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. And like now you can do a little Mudd. They did that short trek.
Yeah. And it's Harry Mudd's a character who has a following. People care about Harry Mudd
because they did an episode. Even okay, yeah, they then did a second one, but the first one alone was like, oh. That's a character that we spent an episode doing that. We established him and made it a memorable person.
And the second one wasn't that great, so it's still really just that first episode that sort of...
Second one just reinforces that he exists more than anything.
So, I think it's an interesting like point, in this episode where we were kind of done talking about what's in the episode, just to sort of to add on that little discussion about how it's handled some of these like secondary characters, particularly like because Barclay I think was what
I would go as far as say tertiary characters.
Yeah, you could say that. Like season 3, I think was maybe when Barclay first, maybe even season 4. I'd have to think about it.
I think O'Brien falls within secondary characters, but like Barclay, like Troy's mother.
Sure, yeah,
characters like that. Those are like tertiary characters where you have maybe 1 episode a season, 2 or 3 times over the show.
If there was another level, what would we call them?
Why do I feel you're setting up something terrible?
I'm not. I just want to know what the quarterly characters are, because that's not right.
I don't know. You don't have anything after tertiary. They're just background. The red shirts after that.
That's the official term, the red shirts. Primary, secondary, tertiary red shirts. That's the levels.
Yeah, I think it is. Universally recognized across all mediums.
No, I think Troy Small is a good example. I'd also maybe throw in Alexander as well at this point.
Yeah,
in that level, yeah. O'Brien's interesting because O'Brien actually I think was there in the first episode. Like he's been here since the start of the show.
I think earlier on in the show you would have classed him as a tertiary character.
He elevated above that.
He
though.
elevated, yeah.
Yeah, that's fair.
Like Ro, I would say is probably a secondary character as well because she was in probably more episodes than some of those, but over a more condensed period as well. So that kind of give her that impact, straight away.
That's fair. Yeah, I guess someone like Lore would fall into tertiary as well.
Yes,
more spread out, but prominent enough that he's memorable.
Yeah,
that's fair. Anyway, there you go. That's our discussion of this Trek episode. That's Realm of Fear. Let's have a quick peek ahead and see what next episode brings us. It's called Man of the People, and it's rated lower than any episode from last season.
Oh boy.
Because I think the lowest last season was Imaginary Friend, and that was 6.0, if I recall correctly.
Oh, this is lower than a 6. Oh boy.
Yes, we're going into a 5.8.
Oh, God.
So, here's the description. When the Enterprise comes to the rescue of an ambassador and his mother, it's in quotations, so I'm emphasizing that. An ambassador and his mother, Deanna finds herself attracted to him and seeks to comfort him upon her death.
We have a Troy romance episode again.
We have a Troy romance episode. Suddenly that 5.8 is making a lot of sense.
I'm willing to bet I'm going to give it like a 3. Not that we rate these, but like internally in my head. Ugh.
Yep, look forward to that. We gotta get through a clunker.
Do we have to?
Yes, we do. We have to get through it. We have to get through it so we can get to whatever's beyond that. Oh, it's a good, probably high rating after that actually. So you get a good one afterwards.
Oh, good. Just one episode of misery then.
Yeah, that's the carrot. And interesting guest star in that episode as well, man. I won't tell you right now.
I recognize?
You'll recognize. So, okay. There you go. That is this episode of Star Trek. So let us know what you thought of this one in the comments below. Like, subscribe, ding the bell for notifications, all that stuff. Get us on the Twitters at mailed_fuzz for channel updates. And of course, if you want to support the show and the content and everything we do, head over to patreon.com/mailfuzztv for as little as $1 per month and get some bonuses for your trouble. But otherwise, that is us. Check out the Babylon 5 reviews, the modern Star Trek reviews that I did with Tara. Head over to the Mail Fuzz Movies channel as well if you want to get some long form movie discussion podcasts on sci-fi and horror movies. But that is the show. So thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching Star Trek, and somewhere out there, Wesley Crusher's having a wet dream about weird worm creatures with mouths.